decision for a violation of their acceptable use policy. Quite a nebulous idea. Toby Young, of course, joins me now. Toby, thanks for joining me.
Pleasure.
Can you talk to us a bit about, firstly, before we get into this, what is the Free Speech Union about? Why was it set up, and what sort of work have you been doing?
So I set it up in February 2020 to defend people that are targeted for cancellation by outrage mobs, not for saying or doing anything unlawful, but merely for exercising their perfectly lawful right to free speech. So we go to bat for people if they're being placed under investigation by an HR department, if someone's trying to kick them out of university for something they've said, something perfectly lawful. So in addition to that casework, that's about 50% of what we do, and we sometimes go to law, and we have quite an extensive legal team. In addition to that, we also run events. We've got an event with you coming up on Tuesday, a book launch. I'm going to interview you on stage, but we've got events coming up with Neil Oliver, the comedian Jack Dee. We've got a Christmas party at Comedy Unleashed. And we also publish FAQs. So, if members of ours are wondering what they should do if they're asked to declare their preferred gender pronouns in the workplace and they don't want to do that, we can tell them what their rights are and whether they should or not.
And it's a non-partisan thing, isn't it? I mean, you defend people from the left, from the right, everywhere in between.
People often try and portray it as, a right-wing organisation because free speech, as we know, is often caricatured as a right-wing issue. But no, we've defended Chris Williamson, the former Labour MP, Richard Dawkins, the biologist, plenty of left-wing people as well as plenty of right-wing people. About a fifth, if not a quarter of the people that call us and ask for our help at the moment are gender-critical feminists, old-fashioned lefties who've got into trouble for standing up for sex-based women's rights.
And, of course, a lot of the subscriptions for membership of the Free Speech Union come through PayPal. Roughly a third, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah, about a third of our roughly 9,500 members are paying their recurring membership dues via PayPal.
And so when did you first hear that PayPal had ditched the account?
It wasn't last Thursday, but the Thursday before, September 15th.
Yeah.
So I got these 3 emails in very quick succession, all claiming that all 3 accounts had violated the acceptable use policy. And, had it been one account that had been found guilty of that particular crime, maybe it would have been plausible. But for all 3 accounts to be found guilty at exactly the same time and closed suggests that there's something else going on in the background.
But it's very unclear what they mean by that. Did they not give you any specifics about in what way had you violated this policy?
No specifics initially, and we called up the customer service agents and they couldn't throw any light on it. I sent an email to the CEO of PayPal UK. He still hasn't replied. Right. Got in touch with the corporate affairs department saying I was intending to write something about this. Could they give me a comment, explain why it had happened? They still haven't got back to me. So, no, we really didn't know. I mean, we're really in the dark about exactly why they've done this. They then, in the case of the Daily Sceptic, followed up a few days later to say that we had breached their policy about promoting hate, violence and racial intolerance, which, you'd be hard pushed. I think, give me an example of where we've done that on the Daily Sceptic. It was completely implausible. And then a few days later, they told a newspaper, oh, no, the reason we kicked the Daily Sceptic off our platform is because they traffic in COVID vaccine misinformation. An entirely different allegation. And that's not even a breach of the acceptable use policy. That's a breach of the user agreement. So they can't make up their minds. I think what's going on is they decided to close all 3 accounts for political reasons, and they're now rushing to come up with some kind of rational justification after the event.
Because it's not just your accounts, is it? This has happened to other people as well.
It's happened to lots of other people. There seems to be a purge going on.
And this isn't the first time. We had Patreon before ditching subscribers. We've had YouTube demonetising people. And it does come down to ideological worldview. It does come down to a perspective that they have, and they don't like people who don't share that perspective using their services. But isn't this very, very sinister? Because if we get to the point where people aren't prepared to say, OK, we disagree with your point of view, but we're going to stop you being able to engage in the business of living, the paying bills, this kind of thing. I mean, this is scary stuff.
It's really an escalation in cancel culture. I mean, it's one thing to be kicked off YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. You can still live your life.
Yeah, but it's probably better.
Pretty improve your life.
Yeah.
But if you actually, if you're no longer able to use banking services, then you're in real difficulty. I mean, in China, it's the social credit system. Ideological conformity is enforced. So if you don't toe the party line, you can have banking services withdrawn completely completely. So you can't even buy groceries in a supermarket. You can't travel from one part of the country to another to see members of your family. I mean, it's a really serious and sinister form of totalitarian control that until now has largely been confined to communist China, but it's now spreading throughout the West, except instead of ideological dogma being enforced by the Communist Party, it's being enforced by capitalist woke corporations.
So where does cancel culture end? Because, it's all very well saying we hate this person's opinions and we want them kicked off Twitter or whatever, but then people are going after people's livelihoods, trying to get them fired. That's part of the typical tactic, and where the Free Speech Union comes in to defend people. Now there are companies saying we don't want you to be able to earn a living anymore or use banking systems. What's the end point? Homelessness? What do they want?
What do they want? I think what they want, Andrew, is for anyone who dissents from the prevailing orthodoxy that they want to promote and they sign up to, they want them to shut up and to not speak out, because if they do, they're going to suffer these various consequences. I think one of the reasons they've singled me out for this punishment beating is to send a warning to others. If you speak out, if you don't toe the line, this will happen to you too. So it's really important that we fight back, and we are fighting back. There was a letter signed by 42 MPs and peers sent to Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Business Secretary, yesterday, saying you need to ask the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority and the Competition and Markets Authority, the financial regulators, to investigate what's happened here, to ask PayPal what they think they're doing. And if it turns out that this is perfectly within the rules, you need to change the rules to make sure it doesn't happen again. And that may mean amending legislation to put legal safeguards in place so financial services companies based in California can't punish people just for saying something perfectly lawful.
Yes, I saw Fraser Nelson wrote an article about this, saying that we needed to make it illegal to discriminate on the basis of political opinions. Is that, is it the case that it's because PayPal is situated abroad that there's a problem?
So the Equality Act does make it unlawful to discriminate against people on the grounds of political belief, broadly speaking. So if PayPal was headquartered in the UK, the Equality Act would apply to PayPal, and I could bring a case for them on the grounds that they discriminated against me for my perfectly lawful political beliefs, which I think are a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. But because they are headquartered, PayPal Europe, headquartered in Luxembourg, and the mothership is in California, there isn't much we can do.
Right. So then what's the next step? Is the government going to put any pressure on these companies, or are they making it worse with their online safety bill?
Potentially they might. The difficulty with the online safety bill is it's telling these big tech companies, you have to not only make sure you don't allow anyone to post something unlawful, but you also have to make sure you don't let them post anything legal but harmful to adults, which is an incredibly nebulous concept. The government's going to fill it out, and they're going to use phrases like misinformation in order to, in the guidance to these social media companies about what they need to remove. Now, they're bad enough as it is. They don't need a nudge. They don't need any encouragement from a Conservative government to be even more censorious than they're already being. So, hopefully the government will strip out the legal but harmful to adult stuff from the online safety bill. But I also think they need to put legislative safeguards in place to stop big tech financial services companies like PayPal from deplatforming people simply for not being sufficiently woke. And actually, it isn't just people on the right of centre who are suffering the ire of these big tech censors. I heard tonight that the Socialist Workers' Party has been demonetised by PayPal. In the US, a couple of left-wing websites that oppose the war in Ukraine, Mint Publishing and Consortium News, they've both been demonetised. So it isn't just people on the right.